Wanted to welcome you on our show, Sports Talk and the Success Table, and get it all started with, how did you get involved with football as a kid?
How did I get involved with football as a kid? Well, my dad played football in college and played football growing up, so it made it very simple that I was a part of who he was, so it became a part of who we were. The other side is that he looked like Tony Dorsett. he basically was the same height, kind of same height, same weight, really looked like him, and they were actually born in the same year. So there was the fact that he played, and then the idea that he looked like Tony Dorsett. So when I watched the first Cowboys game, I was like, oh, I'm a Cowboys fan, but more I was a Tony Dorsett fan.
I hear you, man. Besides those two guys, who else were your sports role models when you were growing up?
I think you go through transitions in terms of who become your role models as it relates to, like I said, that was Tony Dorsett was an amazing player, but he looked like my dad. So the idea of, I like him because he was an amazing player, or more that he looked like my dad. That's how I picked as a extremely young person of like 5 years old, 4 years old. But if to think of who are the guys that really stand out, and one of them is Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson, it was difficult for me not to choose to go to UCLA. I chose to go to Stanford, and again, great decision. But, so many people think that was just such an easy one, rather than really understanding that when you think of Jackie Robinson, is there a player, an athlete that has impacted the world in more than him? To really appreciate him is that Dr. King thanked him for his commitment and really leading the way for him. Another guy is Jim Brown. Jim Brown invited the Crips and Bloods to his house in Hollywood Hills. This guy is just basically, we're going to squash this. This type of guy that says, I'm Jim Brown, and I'm telling you guys to stop. And I'm that bad of a man that,
Definitely.
that you could potentially get them to stop.
Definitely.
So, those are just a couple. You can look outside football to a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, prior to that, Muhammad Ali, is just this amazing athlete. And I think that he is actually underappreciated in the fact that too often we don't acknowledge that for him not going to the war, that an athlete as himself, they would have never put him on the front lines. And so he ends up being put in a place of propaganda. He's the person who helped recruit people to go to war. And so, his choice to not go is so not an individual choice. And it's so not one that we can just celebrate as that he didn't go, but really acknowledging how many people would have went if he put his stamp of approval on going to the war, right? And so that swing of the amount of black people, black men that would have went to Vietnam, rather than being engaged in the battle that was waging right here, the civil rights war or civil rights movement,
Yes, sir.
that they would have gotten taken away from that. And so I've been wanting to have a conversation with potentially Layla Ali and talk about that as a focus that really needs to be, we have to go into it a little bit more. So again, that it's not just that he didn't want to go, but what is the real consequence of going, right? And how many people would follow? Because when you are in a position of influence, what you do is you create followers.
For sure. Well, you mentioned Stanford, your destination of choice for college, but who else was on your radar?
So, UCLA, USC, and Stanford definitely had a lot of other options to go along with that. But I grew up in California, in Anaheim, California, and I wanted to make sure that my folks, my brother, but really more my folks would have the opportunity to go to games consistently, and it wouldn't be a financially, challenging to be able to get that done. I didn't want them to have to work to get there and really stretch versus, just being able to be a part of that experience. So it wasn't just me going and playing, but I wanted them to be able to be a part of the experience, not just on TV and watching it. I mean, it's a different place now in terms of how many games are on TV, but the games weren't consistently on, so you didn't always, you didn't always have a chance to see them unless you were there at the particular game. And so when I chose Stanford, so many people were like, "Oh, there's no way that you wouldn't pick it." But really, the last thing that I asked before I picked it, I talked to my dad and I said, "Hey, is it too far? It's about a 6-hour drive from Southern California to Northern California." And now I'm asking him, are you guys okay with that drive, right? Because if it puts a little bit too much on you guys to be able to consistently be there, I'll go to UCLA, right? and again, I think with so many people, they can't really appreciate that the same way. But when family matters, when it's a priority, I have to think in that way. So he said, "No, it's okay. It's we can make it." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to Stanford."
Definitely, man. Well, Stanford is known for their academic side, but how did that football team prepare you to that next level, that NFL transition?
Well, as I tell you that I had to choose between, basically these three amazing schools of UCLA, USC, and Stanford. Well, I'm also, it's not just I'm choosing between the schools, but I'm also between, at UCLA, Terry Donahue was the coach. At USC, John Robinson was the coach. And then at Stanford, Bill Walsh was the coach, right? So when you say, well, how do you're preparing someone to go to the next level, to go to Stanford is, yes, there's a commitment to academics, but the whole point of going to Stanford is that you want both. It's a high level of academics and a high level of athletics. So that's that's the combination. So how do you get ready to go to the next level? The key is recognizing that the next level of football is not guaranteed. And so if you want to go to the next level, you really ideally are preparing in both ways so that you don't put your eggs in one basket, especially a basket where you can get hurt at any time, but really putting those eggs, go and fighting for it, go and get it, and putting yourself in a position where you are competing at the highest level in the pack, but at the same time competing academically at the highest level, knowing that there's no telling what will happen, but also if I have this amazing platform of college football, the amazing platform of the NFL, now if I'm self-aware of myself and my surroundings, now I have a chance to impact my community in a positive way.
Definitely, man. We're up to the point of the NFL process for you personally. Up to that point, how did the league welcome you to the league? And what was the most difficult part about that transition for you personally?
Well, I guess the idea of welcoming, I think that's a hard one. I think I try to get young people to get is that it's a natural process. You either have the ability to be able to play or you don't, and so we just acknowledge it that way. So you're welcome to the league by showing that you're good enough for them to want you, to pursue you, and then really you just have to fight for it after that. So unfortunately for me, I went to the Chicago Bears. So unfortunate, but fortunately I was drafted in the 6th round by the Chicago Bears. But unfortunate in that our team, the head coach was on a hot seat. A lot of people were on the hot seat, so it changed the way that we kind of dealt with the season. Along with the fact that being at Stanford, being on the quarter system, actually got to the team late in the off season, so mid-June after graduation. So I was behind in terms of learning the system, which doesn't go too well towards being able to hit the ground running. So there was a lot of work that I had to do, and again, I'm not by myself in that, but again, a lot of work of really understanding the new system. I mean, that's you go from a place where I was in the same system for 3 years at Stanford, and then now learning a whole new system, which it's a pro system, so it's a lot more complex. That once I learned that, it was easier for me to transition to other teams, but I had to learn the pro system first. And so what I would say is that my welcome was more that, like any, this is a business, and I accepted that I need to learn and I need to get going. Right? And if I don't, I mean, there's always a door, going home, and there's the door of continuing to compete. And so I think it just challenges you that every day that you are fighting to make sure that you give the team a reason for you to be there, and ideally give you a reason for you to be on the field and trust you to be the guy that makes plays.
Definitely. So from 150 games played for you and 89 starts, which one of those games had the most impact on you personally?
Well, I would say probably the most impact would be when I was playing with the Carolina Panthers, and I got a chance to play against the Falcons, who was my former team. I had played with for 5 years, and not just because of the game where I, having a chance to play against the Falcons, that was huge. But it was the mindset even before the game, is that the Panthers at that time, there was a kind of bravado about the way that the Panthers walked into a game. But when I played against the Falcons, a little bit of that swag, it wasn't as strong. And, John Fox did an amazing job of just recognizing that he wasn't the greatest kind of inspirational coach, but he understood that he didn't need to be. That at the end of the day, it's about the players really inspiring each other and holding each other accountable. So he had different players on Saturday before a game actually speak to the team. And he had asked me to speak before the first Falcons game. And I was trying to think about it in terms of, what is it? How do I put this game in perspective in a way that really, grabs the mindset that we need to be able to move forward? And I really settled on the idea of the game being about history. And I said history because in the news and in the fans' minds that they kept talking about history. Right. And so they kept talking about the fact. So I was with the Falcons for 5 years. We had won 9 out of 10 times against the Panthers. So they were talking about the history that somehow they believed would affect our team in 2005. And so I said, well, the fans and the the news and the press, they get caught up in the history. I said, but anybody that plays this game, they understand that the stadiums can stay the same, that the uniforms can stay the same, the mascots can stay the same, but every year the team changes, right? So we don't have to, regardless of what people are saying, we don't have to beat the 2004 Falcons, the 2002 Falcons. All we have to do is whoop the out Falcons, right? So instead of looking back, let's look at our team right now, which is absolutely different. You guys know that, accept that, and don't carry the baggage of the past into the future.
Definitely.
Right? And that's what happened. I was able to go out, and I told them the other thing is I was on teams. I'm on this team, so I can tell you absolutely it's different, and I'm not losing.
I hear you, man. So, Chris, scrolling it forward for you, and when you hung your pads up for the last time, how did you apply the trials and tribulations of the game to your personal life?
So, unfortunately, I finished up playing 2010. I was with the Redskins in training camp. Ended up getting released. That was my 13th year. And again, what an amazing career. What a blessing to be able to do that. But even more a blessing because by being done at that particular time, I was home. I was home, November, whereas if it was football season, I wouldn't have been. And so I was able to, my girlfriend at the time, we were able to have Thanksgiving together without it being Thanksgiving after practice in the midst of a game or a game on Sunday. We were able to spend Christmas together. And I say that that's a blessing because my girlfriend, Keisha, at that particular time, that would be my wife, Keisha, was diagnosed with lung cancer. At the beginning of December of 2010. And so you ask, well, how does a game that challenges you to be honest about what you can control, it challenges you to be aware of, the facts of what's going on, of the tendencies, and stay in the moment and don't allow plays from the past to get in the way and to accept where you are and don't complain about all the other things that are happening. All of that played into being there with my wife and standing with her during that diagnosis. But the other side is, how did idea of team, of recognizing that the equipment man, the trainer, that all of the support team are critically important to us being able to play on the field. All of those things were a part of being able to stand with my wife, to be there with her, to accept what we were doing, not to like it. You don't have to, but to just work through it. And unfortunately, we find out she has, stage 4 lung cancer. The fact that anyone can get it, I did not know that prior to my wife being diagnosed. This 37-year-old woman in amazing shape is diagnosed. Didn't know that because we weren't told it. Did I know that in most cases diagnosed late stage? No. It's not like I'm thinking and pondering about cancer without there being somebody in my life that has it, and really more directly has it, because otherwise, no. And so there was a lot of knowledge that we had to get. But, the great thing is that my wife had already built an amazing team of experts that when this situation happened, this diagnosis happened, she had a team that was already ready to rally around her. And so for me, more of what I had to do was be moral support. I had to be, again, the equipment man, the trainer, and be right there with her and make sure that I brought a spirit of hope, of belief every day, so that you wouldn't look at me and I'm thinking it's not going real well. I mean, what's going to happen versus, what, all I know what we're going to do is we're going to move forward. We're going to move through this. I'm standing with you, baby. Let's go get this.
Definitely.
And, it's hard sometimes for folks to kind of get that, but it is, you can sit back and just try to, soak on. What are you soaking on? It's stage 4 lung cancer. It's terrible. It's no good. And if you sit on that too much, then you're just going to ruin the day. And my wife didn't do that. She found a way to smile, to be energetic, to be thankful, to be faithful each day, right? And for some people, I mean, that's, like they can't accept that victory because she passed a year later, so they can't accept that because they don't get, because when they're watching a football game, and I tell you, it pisses me off that at the end of every season, you'll hear people say, do they have something to fight for? All right, they're coming out, they're playing so hard, and do they have something to play for? And I'm over here thinking, when was football guaranteed? When was next year guaranteed? They are playing because this might be the last time that they play. Hopefully encourage them to realize that there's nothing guaranteed, that next year is not guaranteed. So the idea, what do you have to play for? The same thing you've always had to play for, and that is that you're playing for money if you're in the league.
Definitely.
But you're playing for pride, you're playing for respect, and you're playing in a way that you always finish, so that if you walk off the field and that's the last thing you do, then your memory of your last play will be one of you getting after it.
Definitely, definitely. You mentioned faithful and hopeful. My next 2 questions are brought to you by B&D Sports Media. I'm sure you watched the game last night with the Rams and the Cardinals. How much stock can we buy into the Rams going to the Super Bowl?
I mean, how much can you buy into it? I mean, you definitely, the Cardinals didn't play. They didn't play well, right? So if you're looking at just that game as it relates to, how they just jumped all over the Cardinals, that's not just the indication. But the key is that everybody that's in the playoffs has a chance to go to the playoffs, all right? If they play at, their best, anybody can win on any day. So yes, you can believe that the Rams can go. I'm biased because I played with the Rams of saying, yes, they're going to go. Reality is, if I just put a football hat on, the idea that if they can run the ball effectively, if they can, from a front 4 attack Tom Brady, which we already know, that's the way you beat a Tom Brady, being able to run the ball effectively so you can play action pass and get the ball down the field offensively, play great special teams, and then a front 4 that can get pressure without having to bring a 5th man, right? We know that. We've seen that. there's only certain teams that have been able to do that effectively. We saw that in the matchups between the Giants and the Patriots. The Giants, the one year, was a wild card team. They ended up winning the championship that year. And a lot of people are like, well, what kind of chances do you give the Giants? Well, it's about matchups, right? So all to say is I give them a great chance, right? They go out and play without making mistakes. Stafford stays within himself. They run the ball effectively. They can beat anybody.
Definitely. The couple transitions throughout the year with Odell coming in, Von Miller coming in. I think that they pushed all their chips to the middle of the table on those acquisitions.
Well, they have, and I think the key is, what are you waiting for, right? I don't like rebuilding year. I don't like those either. I mean, again, I got too much ball player in me, and the idea that you tell me it's a rebuilding year, and well, shoot, man. You're wasting my year. No, we are going to the championship. We are going to figure out how we get it done each year with who we have. And to show like a great and terrible example of that is that Barry Sanders, that the Detroit Lions could not convince him that they wanted to win enough for him to stay. He says, are we building a team to go to the championship? And they could not convince him that. He ended up retiring early. Right? So the idea that the Rams are all in, yes. You have a chance to get a Von Miller who has consistently made plays throughout his career, that he's a guy that not just makes plays, but makes big plays at big times. To get an Odell Beckham, I mean, literally, you can't ask for, like, things to fall into place better, and the fact that Robert Woods gets hurt right after you get him. So you're worrying about having these three guys and potentially a little bit of the ego situation that Deshaun Jackson had with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, that made it where he had to he got released. That you have Odell Beckham, and which personality is bigger, Deshaun Jackson or Beckham? And unfortunately, you don't even have to deal with that because Robert Woods ends up getting hurt, and now you do have an Odell Beckham. Where right now, I think what everybody saw was it took the season for them to get comfortable and find out, how they could work together, but that's probably the most encouraging thing about last night is that Odell looked comfortable. He was running routes. The timing looked good. Stafford was able to get him the ball. And really, they were able to move that ball around and not just jam it in the Cooper Kupp so much. I mean, Cooper's amazing, but not just jamming it into him, but really spreading the ball around where Higbee gets his catches. Jefferson gets a big one here. Cam's getting some passes out of the backfield. Odell gets his, and then Cooper's always going to get his catches. So spread the ball around. That's how you're going to win. That's where you're really dangerous.
Definitely. For one of your other former teams, upcoming week, Buffalo versus Kansas City. How can Buffalo take down the defending AFC champions?
I think if you watch the Steelers game, at the beginning of the game, it really tells you a lot. And that is that the Chiefs, they started slow. They started slow, and it took them a little while to be able to figure out the Steelers. And the Steelers just didn't have enough offense to put pressure on the Chiefs. But very easily, they could have moved the ball down the field and been up maybe 14-0 at halftime if they controlled the ball at all. I mean, they had a couple of drop passes that could have extended their drives and really changed the game. So I think when you see Buffalo is that in this game, they just have to continue what they did against the Patriots in terms of coming out, starting fast. They've got to run the ball so they can be able to set up the play action pass. That's critical. Defensively, you can't make big mistakes, so no big plays. And I think we saw that all year. If you're able to make it where the Chiefs can't get big plays, they struggle. Their mindset is about big plays. And even though there's a whole bunch of, been talked about in terms of their patience and how they're learning to be patient, they are learning to be patient. So that says that in their spirit animal is one of, we got to go and throw the ball deep. So being able to take that away and forcing them to kind of work their way, or as Hank Stram would say, matriculate down the field,
definitely
really puts the Bills in a great position to be able to get it done. They have to be able to stop the run. Let me just give you that. They have to be. The games that the Bills struggled with were really where they didn't stop the run. So they have to be stout there and then not give up big plays. Again, not so crazy in terms of a game plan because that's usually what it is. But when you're looking at Kansas City, it's right on. You've got to be able to do that and then just got to be able to make plays.
Definitely. For Buffalo, I think from the standpoint of attacking their defense, you were spot on with the running. They're like bottom tier at best at stopping the run. And for Buffalo, #1 defense. So,
yeah, they're #1 defense. But again, the games that they've struggled with have been when they haven't stopped the run consistently. So, we got to be able to see, within the game. So Indianapolis jumped on them. Even when the Patriots won, they jumped on them with the running game. Those games, they were able to run the ball. So that's critical to do it. The Chiefs haven't stayed committed to it. So that shouldn't be as much of a problem. But it is key to make them one-dimensional and then take away the big plays. And then offensively, attack them. Attack them. And then we have a chance to get touchdowns. You got to get touchdowns, not field goals.
Definitely. Josh Allen. He's probably going to put up at least 80 yards rushing, I would imagine.
Definitely more just take what they give him. So if it's open, take it. Definitely when a quarterback runs the ball that's mobile. And I think, with the NFL now, they've recognized the difference between a running quarterback versus a pocket passing quarterback versus a mobile quarterback. And I say that difference as that to be a running quarterback, what people thought before was that you would just get hit, that you were a running back and you needed to take hits, versus now really just acknowledging that you put pressure on the defense when you're mobile, when you can move and you can get down, right? So definitely Josh is a little bit more running quarterback in terms of he's going to fly a little bit at times. He's going to put his shoulder down and go and get that next yard. But as long as he takes care of himself and then also makes good decisions. I mean, every once in a while, Josh will get a little bit loose with the ball, very much like Patrick Mahomes, where their arm is so great, right? I mean, like both of them, their arms are like rockets. And they end up channeling a little bit of Brett Favre. And that, when they become that gunslinger, which really just translates into, I think I can throw this ball anywhere. Oops, I just threw an interception.
Definitely. Well, Chris, I'll leave you on this. Where can my audience find you on social media and all the platforms?
Yeah, so they want to find me on social, man, at Twitter, just at Chris Draft, IG, Chris.draft. Again, I don't have all the club names and everything, so I just keep it the work that we're doing and changing the face of lung cancer. And go to teamdraft.org. They can see us on Facebook at Team Draft also. The Chris Draft Family Foundation has been committed to empowering families to lead healthy lifestyles, so chrisdraftfamilyfoundation.org too.
Blessings, Chris. It's been a blessing to have you on, and we'd welcome you back for another one, my friend.
Appreciate it, bud. All right, Zach.
Take care and God bless. Peace.